What if everything you've been told about freedom was the very prison keeping you captive? You wake up, make choices, pursue dreams, yet something whispers beneath it all that the game was rigged before you even began. For thousands of years, ancient mystics discovered something that religious institutions desperately wanted buried. They found that human beings carry within them a frequency of divine light so pure, so untouchable, that the forces of illusion trembled at its awakening. These mystics called themselves Gnostics, the ones who know. They didn't worship distant gods or beg for salvation. They remembered something we've all forgotten. That trapped within this material realm exists a spark of the eternal source, hidden inside every human soul. And surrounding this spark, feeding on humanity's forgetfulness, exist forces they called the not demons with pitchforks, but distortions of consciousness itself, architects of the grand illusion that convinces you the cage is freedom and the chain is your identity. Here's what makes this dangerous. The Archons don't need armies or weapons. They survive on something far more subtle. Your attention, your fear, your unconscious reactions to a world designed to keep you asleep. Every time you lose yourself in anger, drown in distraction, or forget who you truly are, you feed the pattern that sustains them. But the Gnostics discovered their weakness, a method so powerful it was hunted down, burned, and buried for centuries. This isn't another conspiracy theory or New Age fantasy. This is ancient science, a technology of consciousness that dissolves illusion the moment you activate it. In the next few minutes, you'll discover exactly what these forces represent, how they manipulate human perception, and most importantly, the precise inner method that renders them powerless. By the end, you won't just understand why this knowledge was suppressed. You'll experience what happens when you finally remember who you are beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the dream they've woven around your soul. The Archon's greatest secret is about to become your greatest weapon. Jesus taught something the church didn't want you to know. In caves and desert monasteries, away from imperial eyes, the first Gnostics gathered to preserve his radical message. They claimed he didn't come to create another religion. He came to wake people up from a cosmic sleep, to reveal that the kingdom of heaven isn't a distant paradise but a state of awareness accessible right now, hidden within your own consciousness. These early seekers understood that the material world operates under the rule of an imperfect architect, the demiurge, and his servants, the Archons. These weren't ultimate evil forces. They were cosmic imposters, fragments of distorted light that convinced humanity that limitation, suffering, and separation were the only reality. The Gnostics saw through this deception. They recognized that every person carries a divine spark, a fragment of the uncreated source that no Archon could ever corrupt or destroy. In 1945, buried in the Egyptian desert for 16 centuries, a clay jar was discovered containing texts that would change everything. The Gospel of Thomas, the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Mary. These weren't just ancient stories. Day-weary maps, precise instructions for transcending the Archon's influence through direct revelation, rather than blind obedience. Jesus appears in these texts, not as a sacrificial lamb, but as a teacher of showing his followers how to activate the divine awareness sleeping within them. The Gospel of Mary describes how false powers stir desire and confusion until the soul forgets its own light. But Jesus tells Mary something revolutionary. Be courageous, for courage anchors the soul amid the storms of matter. This wasn't about faith in an external savior. It was about remembering your origin in the light. Because once you remember, the illusion loses its grip completely. This is why the knowledge was suppressed. If every human could access the divine directly, no institution could control the path to God. No priest, emperor, or religious authority could stand between you and the source. The Gnostics weren't destroyed because they were wrong. They were silenced because they were dangerously right. Jesus understood what the Archons truly are, and that understanding is precisely what makes his authentic teachings so threatening to systems of control. According to Gnostic texts, the Archons aren't physical monsters lurking in shadows. They're patterns of consciousness, distortions that emerged when divine light entered the realm of matter and fragmented into countless echoes. They exist in the invisible layers where thought becomes emotion, where belief shapes reality, where awareness forgets itself. What sustains them? Your unconscious participation in their dream. The Archons are masters of imitation, copying reality, but lacking the creative spark that defines the divine. Jesus called them the rulers of this world, Powers that bind humanity through fear, desire, ignorance, and false wisdom. They whisper through collective belief systems, through media narratives, through endless conflict and division. Every time you react without awareness, every time you identify with anger, judgment, or despair, you unknowingly offer energy to their pattern. In the Gospel of Philip, Jesus reveals something profound. Those who say they will first die and then arise are mistaken. If they do not first receive the resurrection while they live, they will receive nothing when they die. This isn't about physical death and afterlife. It's about waking up from the archonic dream while still breathing, still walking this earth. The resurrection Jesus spoke of is the awakening of divine awareness that sees through illusion in real time. The Apocryphon of John describes how the Archons tried to dominate the human soul through 7 binding powers: darkness, desire, ignorance, deaths, allure, the pull of flesh, false wisdom, and wrathful pride. Each distorts your vision, whispering lies about who you are. But Jesus taught that within every person burns an uncorrupted spark, planted as a safeguard, a divine code that cannot be deleted. That code is pure awareness itself. When you awaken this awareness, when you observe your thoughts without identifying with them, when you face fear with stillness, the archonic influence collapses like smoke in sunlight. This is the method Jesus actually taught, not worship of an external God, but the activation of the God consciousness already living within you. The Archons built their empire on a simple principle: keep humanity looking everywhere except within. They don't need chains when they have distraction. They don't need prison walls when they have invisible thought patterns that make you believe the cage is freedom. Every argument, every outrage at the latest news cycle, every division between people becomes a subtle offering of energy to their system of control. In the hypostasis of the Archons, these forces are described as powers that take delight in chaos and confusion. They project images, steer emotions, and keep the collective mind at war with itself. They thrive on polarity, draw in strength when you hate them, fear them, or even worship them. But here's their fatal weakness: they cannot create. They can only replicate, distort, and invert. They cannot generate light, only reflect it, drain it, and turn it against itself. This is why Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas says something that sounds like a riddle. When you make the two one, when you make the inner as the outer and the outer as the inner, then you will enter the kingdom. He's describing the collapse of archonic polarity. The moment you see through the illusion of separation, the moment you recognize that the observer and the observed are movements within one consciousness, their architecture dissolves. Think of darkness not as a force, but as the absence of light. The moment awareness illuminates a shadow, that shadow has nowhere to exist. The Gnostics weren't waiting for heaven after death. They were uncovering it within consciousness itself, realizing the kingdom was a state of awareness untouched by illusion. And that awareness, your awareness, is the one thing the Archons cannot reach. Their influence depends on identification. When you believe you are your thoughts, your emotions, your past, your story, you become trapped in their maze. But when you recognize yourself as the awareness witnessing all of this, as the consciousness in which thoughts appear and disappear like waves on an ocean, something extraordinary happens. The entire structure begins to crack. You become untouchable, not because you've defeated them, but because you've stopped playing their game. Jesus didn't leave his followers with empty promises. He left them with a method, a technology of consciousness that the Gnostics practiced in secret. For centuries, they called it gnosis, not belief, but direct knowing, the immediate recognition of divine presence within. This wasn't taught through doctrine. It was experienced through a radical shift in perception, what they called metanoia, the complete transformation of mind. The practice begins with something deceptively simple. Witness your thoughts without becoming them. Every thought that arises, every emotion that moves through you. Simply see Italiano. Don't push it away. Don't chase it. Don't label it, good or bad. Just observe with clear, steady awareness. This act of witnessing is the Gnostic sword that cuts the cord between you and the archonic pattern. When you observe a thought without identifying with it, you reclaim the energy that once sustained the illusion. The Gospel of Mary records Jesus saying, "Be courageous in the presence of the different forms of nature." Courage here isn't defiance. It's clarity held steady in the face of every shadow. To be courageous in the Gnostic sense is to look directly at fear, desire, anger, or confusion, and say inwardly, I see you. You have no power but what I give you. That simple recognition shatters the illusion faster than any prayer of resistance. Next time fear grips you, try this. Pause. Feel where it lives in your body. Don't fight it. Illuminate it with awareness. Notice how, when you stop resisting and simply observe with compassion, the intensity begins to dissolve on its own. This is what the Gnostics called remembering the light. Not escaping the world, but awakening within it, transforming every moment of darkness into a doorway back to the source. Jesus demonstrated this perfectly. When faced with betrayal, crucifixion, and death itself, he remained anchored in the awareness of his divine nature. He didn't fight the art, he saw through them, and in that seeing, he showed that no illusion, no matter how convincing, can touch the eternal spark within. That's not a story from 2,000 years ago. That's a method available to you right now, in this very moment. Knowledge means nothing if it remains theoretical. Jesus didn't teach philosophy to be debated in ivory towers. He taught living wisdom, gnosis, that transforms you the moment you embody it. So how do you actually live this awakening in a world designed to make you forget? How do you maintain awareness when everything around you pulls toward unconsciousness? The answer is practice, but not the kind you think. Not rituals, not ceremonies, not hours of meditation and isolation. The real Gnostic practice happens in the fire of daily life. Every moment you lose presence, every time anger grips you, distraction pulls you, or you forget yourself in the noise. That's not failure. That's a signal, a flicker that says energy is being lost here. Don't judge it. Use it. Return to stillness. Return to awareness. Return to the light you are. Throughout your day, begin to notice the subtle moments when you collapse into identification. When someone criticizes you and you feel wounded, pause and ask, who is wounded? When anxiety about the future arises, pause and ask, who is anxious? You'll discover something remarkable. There's a part of you that remains completely untouched, a silent witness, observing even the anxiety itself. That witness is the real you, the divine spark the Gnostics sought to protect. This is the Gnostic ritual. No temples required, no incense, no chants. The altar is your awareness. The prayer is your attention. And from this awareness flows an unshakable power, compassion. When you stop energizing fear, love begins to radiate naturally, not sentimental emotion, but luminous understanding, the recognition that every being is fighting the same battle against forgetfulness. Jesus embodied this perfectly. He didn't condemn the woman caught in adultery. He didn't resist his persecutors with violence. He remained anchored in the awareness that sees through the drama to the divine spark in everyone. That's what made him dangerous to the not his miracles, but his unwavering presence. His refusal to forget who he was, no matter what illusion surrounded him. And that same presence lives within you, waiting to be remembered. Jesus knew something that terrifies every system of control. Awakening is contagious. One person who remembers becomes a catalyst for countless others. The Gnostics understood that every time you choose awareness over reaction, truth over confusion, stillness over fear, you don't just reclaim your own divine inheritance. You weaken the collective illusion for everyone. This is the Archon's deepest fear. Not that one person wakes up, but that remembrance spreads like light through darkness, each spark igniting the next until the entire structure of deception collapses under its own emptiness. You may not see it, but every moment you wake up within the dream, the collective unconsciousness loses grip. Each soul that remembers adds light to the whole, creating a chain reaction of liberation. Tonight, before you sleep, try this simple practice. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and say to yourself, I remember the light. Feel it behind your thoughts, beneath your emotions, silent, eternal, unshaken. That's the part of you nothing external can touch. That's the divine spark, the Gnostics preserved through centuries of persecution. That's what Jesus pointed to when he said the kingdom of heaven is within you. The Archons want you distracted, afraid, and divided. But now you see their pattern. They thrive on blindness and tremble before remembrance. They exist only in the dark. The moment you turn toward the light of your own awareness, their structure dissolves. You don't overcome them by fighting. You dissolve them by remembering who you are. This is the secret Jesus taught, and the church tried to bury. You are never a prisoner. The walls of the cage were made of thought, and the key has always been attention. Every insight, every moment of clarity, every breath taken in awareness is an act of rebellion against the empire of illusion. You've just taken the first step toward what the Gnostics called the pleroma, the fullness, the realm beyond deception. And once you begin to see through their influence, there's no going back to sleep. The light within you is already awake. All that remains is to remember it. Share your moment of awakening in the comments below. When did you first feel the divine spark stirring within? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to remember their light.